So while we are waiting for the whiteout to dry, let's do our shadows. And shadows, as you know, light source, let's say, is going to be this fist, and everything that falls away from it is going to be in heavy, heavy shadows. So this is all going to be in heavy, heavy, heavy shadow. This is all going to be in heavy, heavy, heavy shadow. With little highlights here and there, like the pads on his, you know, this rises so it might catch a bit of light, but not much. We're gonna really sell the shadow here. Okay, again, light coming this way. We'll leave a little line here for like one of these veins that crosses through, which I don't have, but most people that have actual muscles do. And the veins on this, I don't know if you guys watched my Bane drawing in real time. I'm going to add with the whiteout stick, and you'll see what I mean about using the whiteout stick for highlights, because I will be using, or for effects, drawing veins with the whiteout stick, which is just a method that I far prefer. Okay, again, still being very cognizant of where the light is coming from and picking up the shadow. So these pecs would be casting shadow depending on how far they protrude. Now, because he's leaning back, the pecs wouldn't protrude as much. If he was leaning forward, look how these fingers cast a shadow, but when they're leaning back, they don't. You guys can kind of see that. So even though he's huge and he has big muscular pecs, these are things I got to be aware of, so I don't make it seem as though the anatomy is wrong simply with my shading. Okay, so this will be all dark. Keeping in mind there's refracted light, so we've got a bit of a line here. I've covered refracted light quite a bit in other videos, but I'll get into it briefly. Just means that light reflects, and that often, again, like in here, it doesn't go to the very edge. So even though I've covered this already, let me show you what I mean. Light source is coming from here. There's my lamp. The shadow will not go to the very edge of a circle. It will leave refracted light, which coincidentally leaves a bit of a halo to separate the darkness from here with the cast shadow. So there you go. You've learned something. Unless, of course, you already knew that, and then you didn't learn something. You were reminded of something. And it's that type of philosophy is the reason why this account is not monetized. Okay, so we're going to have some cast shadow from the fingers. Definitely going to cast shadow. But the light is going to come, see how here it's all darkened out? I'm not going to do that here because the light's going to come right in, except for the areas where it will cast shadow. You can already kind of get a sense of where the light is coming from now. I'm putting in these heavy, heavy blacks. Okay, so again, with the abs, we're going to have a lot of deep shadow coming underneath the rib cage here. And on the bottom of the abs, not on the tops. But again, everything that I'm working with is just a circle. So if I can shade that, I can shade everything. Just look at what I'm doing. It's no different than this. I'm treating every one of these abdominal muscles as a circle. Why? Because that's what they are. Same as these Hulk love handles here, they're all just circles. Okay, and under here, obviously, we're gonna have a cast shadow underneath this overlap of his purple pants. Why does Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, always wear purple pants? Because Bruce Banner the scientist took a cue from Einstein and bought, I think it was like 8 copies of the same exact suit so that he would never have to worry about what to wear. So he's always wearing purple pants in that shirt. I think Marvel Comics should do more advertising with the Hulk. Why? Why do you say? Because he's basically a giant banner. Alright. Okay, I'll stop now, I promise. Okay, big shadow underneath here, and you'll notice, you can barely see it, but I left a white halo. That's my refracted light. Here I won't, because it's fabric, so we'll have like the little phrase all in dark. Big, big, big cast shadow in here. Why? Because the calf muscle is huge, and this is really coming away from the light, so let's go ahead and have a lot of dark on here. Again, always leaving a kind of a white halo. Same thing here. This whole area, we're going to really kind of exaggerate the holding line by making it really thick and spot a lot of heavy blacks as they retreat from the light. These aren't just being thrown down indiscriminately. It's areas that are running away from the light are going to have the heavy shadows. If it looks like I'm just throwing down black haphazardly, there is, as always, a method to the madness. There's a point where ultimate logic and reason meets ultimate insanity on the wheel, and it's hard to differentiate between the two. And that's where I like to live. Oh, and now let's kind of redraw this. Yeah, that looks a bit better now. And put a hint of muscles coming in from the back. And this head is now situated too low. It kind of looks like his head is so low that it's kind of ridiculous. But you know what? Because of the fact that his arms are thrown back, it would lift the shoulders up to a point that I think I might be able to get away with it. Whereas if his arms were in a different position, I would just have to white out the head and redraw it because it's so low. But again, I think that my saving grace might be because these arms are thrown back, which lifts up these shoulders a lot. I might be able to pull it off. Let's just see. Let's just see here if we can do it. I'd hate to have to redraw the entire head, especially on a live draw, but you know, let's just roll with the punches on this one. Okay, so let's do our cross-hatching. Again, right now, like the blacks are spotted, it looks fine, but we have to do kind of our gray areas, and this could be done with Copic markers. But today, I mean, I've already done the Copic marker on the Bane, and I think the Daredevil sketch as well for gray tones. So I think today I'll just stick with the traditional comic book style, you know, just thinking as if this perhaps was going to be given to a colorist, then I wouldn't be doing gray tones. I would just give him the inked version like I'm doing now. And if this was going to be given to an inker, then those pencils that you saw me do would be really, really tight. It wouldn't be just you know, if you guys, as you witnessed me draw this, had I have given the pencil that you saw me do here to an inker, they would be likely pretty mad, and I would probably be pretty fired because, I'm sorry, just adjusting the camera there, because they were very, very sloppy pencils. Okay, so the gray tones here are going to be represented by hatching. And I'll be doing some cross hatching. I like to do all my hatching in one direction. And then as I switch directions and I hatch again, the lines will cross, and that is how I do cross hatching. Rather than just cross hatch one section, move on to the other section, I just kind of do all the one way at once. And I'm still using the same marker. I've inked this entire thing with this same marker just to show you how versatile these brush pens are. They really are great. One directional hatching, and a lot of this hatching I'm just gonna leave as hatching as well. I'm not going to cross hatch. And one thing I hate is stippling. It just takes forever. For those of you who don't know what stippling is, it's laying in your values, your grayer tones, with, instead of doing cross hatching or hatching like I'm doing, you do little tiny dots. And it takes a month of Sundays to, it's just too long. I think that's why you don't ever see, except for certain texture effects like on rocks and moss and things like that, stippling looks great, but on actual characters in comics you see more cross-hatching and not a whole hell of a lot of stippling, because we as comic book artists, we have to work fast, right? Like it's a very, I mean, I've worked in a lot of different art fields. As a commercial artist, you name it, I've done it to try and make a living from, you know, any job that, I say this with full confidence, that involves the arts, I've done at some time, at some point or another. And I can tell you that the most labor intensive is drawing comics, where you have to do the most amount of work in the shortest amount of time. And it's a shame that comic book artists don't really necessarily get their due, you know? Like, now it's kind of changing, but back in Kirby's day, you would never see comic book art in a gallery, an art gallery. And still to this day, I belong to certain arts groups here in Sault Ste. Marie, and I struggle to be taken seriously, like, oh, you're that comic book guy. Or I'll do a comic book with lots of blood and sex and gore and violence, and, you know, I'll go to an arts event and someone will say, oh, you're the comic book guy. Yeah, we put your table over in the kids section. And I'm like, have you seen what I do? You know, like, just, but that's kind of the, it's still kind of the stigma that we face, right? Oh, and the Hulk has fingernails. How silly of me. Is the Hulk the strongest character that Marvel has? I say yes. And arguments have been made for Thor, Hercules, Beta Ray Bill, Gladiator. I say that the Hulk only because those characters may start out stronger than him, but he has the potential for unlimited strength due to the madder he gets, the stronger he gets. Okay, now you're going to watch me crosshatch by just going the other way. Who's the best inker in the business? Back in the day, we had Joe Sinnott, a guy that really made his name for himself on Image Comics as an inker was Batt, B-A-T-T. Klaus Janson. Todd McFarlane's a great inker. I think he's a better inker than he is a penciler. Oh, and I forgot to do standard hatching on this muscle. I knew something was wrong. Best inker in the business, man, that's a tough one to call. Clearly it would be Darren Emon, the master of shenanigans, right? Right, guys? Alright, I can hear your laughter from here, through the lens, through the internet, on a video that I haven't even posted yet. Keep it down. Scott Williams, the guy that's been Jim Lee's longtime inker. I think an argument could definitely be made for him. But certainly the names that I've named are amongst the best. And of course no one can say, right? Because it's all subjective. It's all subjective. To a point. To a point is it subjective. There's always a point. There's always, no matter how much anything, and I mean anything, makes sense. It only ever makes sense to a point. You know, art is subjective. Yes, makes total sense. I would agree with that. No one can really say who is a better artist. Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Therefore, any 10-year-old who can fold a paper airplane is on par with Leonardo da Vinci? No. There you and I part company. Okay, so I'm starting to look at it now, and the head is a touch too low, but guess what? I think I was able to sell it. As I said, with putting these shoulders, like they're so big that it just looks like these shoulders are ridiculously muscular, and that's what pushes the head down, rather than the fact that I screwed up, which is the reality. So hey, we'll take it. And now with some highlights in the hair here. Alrighty, and a little bit of some cleanup effects. And what is it missing? There was one thing. Oh yes, of course! I knew I forgot something. The veins! The veins! And I did say that I was going to do this with whiteout. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the veins in. And now this part you may not be able to see on camera, except where it sort of intersects in the black. But because my lighting concept that I talked about, where I'm always going to concentrate on where the shadows fall, because of that principle, when I go in and with my marker, I'm going to shade the underside of all of these veins, and then you will see them even in the white areas. And the whiteout stick is just like the marker. The harder I press, the thicker the line. So here I'm using thin to thick lines to show a bit of variety, but mostly thick because he's really thick and veiny, and have a couple cut through here. Okay, and maybe even have just a couple in here. He's so damn veiny, he would even have some coming into his pecs and whatnot. And while that's drying, there's just a big white area here that just seems like it's too much, so I'm going to use some dry brushing effects to put in some stress lines on his pecs where they meet here in the middle. A little bit of hatching to bring them out. Dry brushing effect, there's a lot of ink on this pencil, but if I just skirt lightly over it, it will leave me a streaky line, very similar to a dry brush effect. Okay, it's looking a bit, maybe even just a couple in here, just kind of stress lines, you know, shading his nipples a little bit. His gamma irradiated nipples. He's got the toughest damn nipples in the business, I tell you. And maybe just put a hint of little hairs on him. He's not like Bane, the drawing I did of Bane, where he's kind of like the Wolfman or Wolverine that I did also on this channel, where he's just so damn hairy that, you know, you can't even really see much underneath it, but a little bit at least, not too much. And also in the forearms, so just a hint of forearm hair. And now that the whiteout is dry, we go underneath every single one of these big blobs of whiteout, not on top, but under, because of the light. And that is where, and maybe just a couple of hints. Again, varying up my line weight. See, like there's even a little gap here. Thick to thin lines shows us that the veins are thick to thin. This one will have a big, heavy line weight underneath it. And a little more hatching here where I forgot. Let's take a quick look at it, see if there's anything else I want to add. Not really, I'd say. Well, I mean, obviously, if we were going to put a background in, you would have a cast shadow. But let's do that with just that dry brushing effect that I told you about. See how it just gets all streaky? And that's just because I'm going kind of quick to establish a cast shadow, which would then fade off into the distance. So that kind of solidifies him a little bit, shows that he's standing on something. Obviously, if we had time, we could draw a whole gnarly background, but I think we will call this one, to borrow another line from Bob Ross, let's call this one done. Thanks for staying in, and next sketch, I'm going to be drawing we're going to be doing another quick draw. And for those of you who are new to this channel, quick draw is when I take your favorite characters, it could be the Hulk, it could be anyone, and they are drawn in 10 minutes or less. So it wouldn't be quite this involved. It's done in real time, there's no editing, just as in this one, this one we had very little editing, but it would be done in real time, so it can be, I highly recommend you just go in the video and you check them out, so I wouldn't have to explain it to you, but it's just really quick, fun sketches done in 10 minutes or less. If you don't have the attention span to sit through one of these, so please just leave a comment below and ask me what character you would like to see drawn in a quick draw. I'm more of a classic superhero guy. I'm not necessarily like the manga type guy, so just keep that in mind. And also please remember that I am just an independent guy who's not monetized, so if you like this, you would be helping me out a lot by clicking like and subscribe. And with that, we'll see you next time.